the U.S. out of every single part of this world that it seeps its nasty little claws into to reap the resources of our land and keep our people oppressed. That is what we're fighting for, the biggest, baddest enemy. Right now, we are in front of the White House, the political center of the #1 terrorist in the world, which propagates counterinsurgency against our people, which cultivates the tools and means and weapons of war on the daily as the people are suffering. It funnels billions and billions of dollars into the war industry, not just to the neglect of our people, but to the willful attack against our people. That's what that represents. Down with NATO! Down with NATO! People struggle!
Well, we thank you all for coming to No to NATO, Yes to Peace, and Refuse NATO. Thank you for all the Refuse NATO folks who have just marched in. My name is Ann Wright. I'm a coordinator with David Swanson and 10 different organizations that have put on the No to NATO conference that we had yesterday, and I know the Refuse NATO has had an excellent conference yesterday afternoon too. So we are all here in great solidarity with No to NATO.
So this rhetoric of global security masks the reality that in fact NATO itself is the foremost global existential threat. NATO and the US military, which dominates it, is the largest institutional emitter of global emissions in the world. These wars and preparations for war exacerbate the climate crisis, which is then used as justification for more spending, right? More militarism. So the militarism fuels climate crisis, and the climate crisis fuels more militarism in a viciously unsustainable cycle. So all of this threatens our future, right? And the world that generations yet born will have to contend with.
By proclaiming that thermonuclear weapons assure us life and security, the core of NATO has been focused on increasing and modernizing Western nuclear stockpiles, enriching US defense manufacturers, and spreading US nuclear weapons around Europe through nuclear sharing programs. NATO's website actually reads that their nuclear sharing arrangements are at the heart of the alliance's deterrence and defense posture. The only way that NATO hopes to prevent war is by increasing the seriousness and the magnitude of its threats to its enemies.
So this is the money laundering scheme that is NATO, that we say absolutely no to. And those of you who live here in the United States, we have a couple of things coming up where you can show your opposition to the money laundering scheme that both the Democrats and the Republicans buy into. One is coming up very soon, the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Boo! The other one coming up after that, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Boo! They don't even know who their presidential candidate will be. And one thing right here in Washington, D.C., that we have to come out to in full force is Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to a joint session of Congress on July 24th. So raise your hand if you're going to join us to give him the unwelcome he deserves in Washington, D.C. We need you to tell your friends, to tell your colleagues, everybody come out to say no to NATO, no to Benjamin Netanyahu, and yes to peace.
Robin Silong, I'm a member of Malaya Movement USA, specifically the Malaya Baltimore chapter. I am here with the Filipinos Against NATO contingent of the Resist NATO Coalition. We are joined together here today because NATO is, and as an organization, poses a threat to people's independence around the world. Specifically in the Philippines, it is a huge barrier to sovereignty, human rights, and democracy in the Philippines. It is currently has a laser focus on Southeast Asia due to rising tensions between US and China. And what we're seeing is the US is preparing to drag the Philippines into a war that does not benefit the Filipino people, right? We've got US bases scattered across the Philippines. Technically, US bases aren't allowed on the Philippines, but there are currently various military agreements allowing US soldiers to train on Filipino bases in what was called the Advanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA. And we see the US military having undue influence on Filipino policy. We have bases right there that the US has no business being in, and what these bases do to the Filipino people themselves is really terrible. We see the sex trade flourishing around these bases. We see environmental destruction because of the bombs they are using in these military exercises. We are seeing peasants and fisher folks forced off of their land and water. And on top of all of that, the funding that the US gives to the Philippine military is being used to commit war crimes against its own people.
This week, they're inviting the rest of their gang, NATO, to come here. We're here to bust their party. NATO does not need to be here. We don't want NATO here. In the past year, people all around the world have had a consciousness-raising experience as they saw what happened in Gaza, the genocide. Even the Western-oriented organizations have named it as a probable genocide. They could not say anything else because we saw it. We saw it in the screens that we have in our pockets. There's been many wars, many genocides, but this one we witnessed. And the people said, no, we can't stand by and have it happen. In the college campuses all across the country, people rebelled. I heard today that there were 900 people arrested in the United States from our campuses. People, young people, may be sacrificing their schooling for the sake of protesting this genocide. You can't ask for more. These people are the people that are making up the new anti-war movement, many of whom you saw marching here today. This is the movement that we need to end Zionism, to end the genocide, and to end NATO.
They're having a forum on the Indo-Pacific. Last I checked, NATO stood for North Atlantic. It's nowhere near the Indo-Pacific. That's because NATO was not just about the North Atlantic. NATO was everywhere. NATO's not about peace. It's about counter-revolution. It's about attacking whoever it wants for this White House to still remain on top. So what does this mean for our peace movement? What was really great about our Resist NATO summit that we had last night is we talked about the movement for a just peace must connect with all of those who are waging a just struggle for their liberation. Because peace is about self-determination. Peace is about sovereignty. Peace is not just the absence of violence for a little bit of time. It is about creating a new system where we don't have to decide if we're going to pay for school or go to the doctor.
The world doesn't need rising military spendings and more deadly weapons. What people need is more investment to fight poverty, disease, and climate change. No peace without justice. Stop NATO, stop militarism. Free Palestine and all oppressed people in the world. Thank you.
The people struggle can't be